Good morning, everyone. It's my honor to introduce our keynote speaker. General Chase Saltzman is the Chief of Space Operations, or CSO, for the U.S. Space Force. As CSO, he serves as the Senior Space Officer in the newest branch of the U.S. military and is responsible for the organizing, training, and equipping of all organic and assigned U.S. Space Forces around the world. As a member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the CSO, along with the other service chiefs, serves as a military advisor to the Secretary of Defense, the National Security Council, and the President of the United States. A Kentucky native, General Saltzman is a graduate of Boston University and was commissioned into the U.S. Air Force in 1991 through the Reserve Officer Training Corps program. Since then, he has served in a variety of positions of increasing responsibility for the Air Force, commanding at the squadron, group, and wing level. In 2020, he transferred to the U.S. Space Force as the first ever Deputy Chief of Space Operations for Operations, Cyber, and Nuclear. Today as CSO, General Saltzman is committed to ensuring that Guardians have the tools they need to serve the preeminent Space Force, serving our nation's interests in, from, and to space. We are honored to welcome him here as our opening keynote speaker. General Saltzman will discuss how the Space Force is looking to our commercial partners to leverage emerging capabilities to meet a rapidly evolving mission domain in space and support interagency and international partnerships. General Saltzman, the floor is yours.
Well, mahalo, Victoria. Thank you. It's really great to be back in Maui. I mean, where would you rather be than right here, right now? Out in the sun is the answer. Or still in bed. Thanks, Leslie. Thanks to all that EDB does for this great organization. What a beautiful blessing. Thank you for that. That was terrific. We should all take a moment to think about what it means to grant us knowledge from above. That's quite a gift. And as I look out on this audience, I'm thinking I also need to be granted knowledge of the above. So that's going to be our charge today, is to figure out exactly how we build space domain awareness as teammates and as partners. So I just really think it's great to be here with at this conference, the work that Paul and Darren have done. Thank you to the whole team, Sandy, Ryan. Terrific, just terrific conference, so thank you. Having the AMOS conference, one of the premier conferences on space domain awareness anywhere, but located here only strengthens our connections to the local community and improves our nation's ability to expand our space domain awareness efforts. So thank you. Thanks for all AMOS does. Now, speaking of the local community, the Space Force is rightfully proud of the unique role the 15th Space Surveillance Squadron plays, the neighborhood watch of space, and the important work it does for us and the nation here in Maui. The Maui Space Surveillance Complex was one of the pioneer projects of the space age back in the 1950s. Its presence here has been a gem of the space community for decades, and it is one that the U.S. Space Force does not take for granted. Haleakala is sacred ground, and the Space Force is honored to be associated with it. The Space Force is the newest military service, which means we have an opportunity to look at our partnerships through different eyes, see our relationships differently, and meet our obligations with new collaborations. We are fully committed to respecting the mountain's cultural and spiritual significance and moving forward only in complete partnership with the community. Today, the 15th Space Surveillance Squadron is part of the cutting edge of space domain awareness. Therefore, I think the 15th is uniquely structured to directly fuse space domain awareness operations with AFRL's research and development efforts, focusing on keeping our advantage in the space domain. I don't think I have to tell this audience how important and how critical the work that squadron is, how critical that work is for our nation. It's an essential element in our ability to avoid operational surprise in the space domain. And remember, this is the #1 tenet of our theory of success, and I have to tell you, we still have work to do. Here's where I want to be very clear, though. The Guardians, that's military and civilians, are expertly working hard to maintain our awareness of the space domain every single day. And there's really no telling where we would be in SDA without their heroic efforts. But much of our SDA mission set was built for a different era. an era where space was not a warfighting domain. So we need to increase our manpower, update our training, enhance our tools, rewrite our policies and procedures, and do a better job of leveraging our domain data. We cannot be satisfied if it takes us hours to detect on-orbit activity. And we definitely cannot be satisfied if full characterization of on-orbit events takes weeks and months. Obviously, objects on orbit that don't have current state vectors in the catalog, that's a problem. An object with a state vector several days old is an issue. The longer it takes to update the catalog, the more problematic the issue, the less domain awareness we have. We need to retire our lost list, not manage it, because that creates ideal conditions for operational surprise. I hope the group of pros assembled here takes up the challenge to fix SDA limitations. Now, some of us here know what policies need to be adjusted, but we lack the authority to direct the adjustment. Others have the authority, but don't know how or which policies need to be fixed. We have brilliant engineers, industry innovators here, but they may not know the operational nuances that need to be addressed. One reason we have these conferences is to make these connections, enhance our collaboration, tackle these challenges as a team. I see good collaboration going on, like I saw up at the 15th and at the SDA TAP Lab yesterday. But we need a more comprehensive program to avoid operational surprise, not just enhance ongoing efforts incrementally. We need to solve SDA problems, not just improve SDA processes. As many of you know, but probably few of you actually remember, the Corona program, the nation's first successful photographic reconnaissance satellite program, played a crucial role during the Cold War. These innovative new satellites provided first-of-its-kind intelligence on Soviet military capabilities, and they became the foundation of all our nation's subsequent and increasingly sophisticated satellite systems to this day. The declassification of the Corona program and its Gambit and Hexagon capabilities dramatically advanced the state-of-the-art of the space enterprise. For example, these programs embraced the factory-to-pad concept, reducing cost and schedule times. It used the first complete environmental testing for satellites. It encouraged innovation in program management, in systems engineering, and more importantly, in collaboration with industry. According to the NRO Historian's Office, the secret sauce of these programs' success was, and I quote, a can-do spirit instilled through a strong statement of need and a joint commitment of the contractor and the government customer. We need the same can-do spirit once again today. Space is becoming exponentially more congested each day, and our SDA capabilities are struggling to keep pace. And without operationally relevant SDA contesting the space domain to maintain our strategic advantages will be nearly impossible. To win in space, we must understand the domain. But it's more than just that. We must move beyond just a potpourri of sensors and data into an era of true decision quality understanding. Here's how the whole SDA ecosystem, government, industry, allies, partners, and all the smarts and capabilities they offer are fusing together all the required elements we need to avoid operational surprise, to deter, protect, defend, and if need be, win in space. Now more than ever, we need our partners to help make that possible. We need you, everyone in this room today, to help us turn commercial innovations into a warfighting advantage, for mission priorities, for interagency requirements, and to strengthen our international partnerships. I believe, as does all the Space Force leadership, that we need to shift from a largely transactional relationship with industry to a much more collaborative partnership. And we know that this will require increased trust on both sides. Trust built through routine, high-level, conceptual discussions, partnered war games, technology review days, detailed discussions to fully understand the requirements. By promoting greater integration of commercial services, innovation, IRAD, we can enhance our delivery of capabilities and provide the Joint Force what they need when they need it. Now, much has changed since I spoke here 2 years ago, but much has not. But at the end of the day, we still need to ensure that we do not allow our adversaries to close the gap between our best-in-class SDA and their ever-expanding efforts to surpass us. And the good news is we're making progress. We now have a commercial space strategy. We now have an international partnership strategy. These will help. They will help structure conversations and point us in a common direction. There are other ways we're improving capability development as well. Just yesterday, I had the opportunity to visit the SDA Tools Application and Processing Lab here in Maui. The TAP Lab was created to accelerate the delivery of cutting-edge space battle management software to our operational units quickly and effectively, so they have the full benefit of our SDA insights when and where they need it. The lab has transitioned one prototype application, an uncorrelated target tracker algorithm, to the Atlas secret environment. They've deployed 5 prototype applications to the top secret environment and provided training and familiarization to NSDC operators, and multiple application transitions to the JCO cell are currently in work. And kudos to the Maui Economic Development Board for their efforts to establish an extension of this innovative lab here on Maui, an effort that will only help Hawaii's aerospace sector and foster greater collaboration between the Space Force and our commercial partners. The lab also runs a collaborative tech accelerator for industry, academia, and government here. It's called the Apollo Accelerator, and it solves some of the most critical SDA challenges. Every 3 months, they bring in a new group of participants and provide them with the tools to collaborate, learn together, help solve hard problems. It's a remarkable model of how we can all work together. Another way we are strengthening ties with industry is through the Space Systems Command's Front Door program, a program focused on simplifying the industry engagement process between SSC and the commercial space enterprise, all with the goal of improving communication, collaboration, and integration with our commercial partners. And to better align with the Space Force's commercial space strategy, Front Door has worked to expand support across our field commands, the other military services, external government agencies, and international allies and partners. Already, this simplified one-stop shop for commercial providers and government stakeholders is extending its reach across the space enterprise. By providing a single point of entry for commercial space partners looking to do business with the government space community, we're able to proactively identify capabilities to fill gaps in the warfighting architecture with better market intelligence and a more streamlined commercial data lake. This not only builds an index of commercial capabilities across the defense, intelligence, civil, and international space communities, but also enables more automated, data-driven decision-making for senior leaders, acquirers, operators, intelligence professionals alike. And it benefits industry as well by encouraging a broader array of industry participation with more opportunity for smaller companies to step up to the plate, with greater insight into government needs and a single point of access for guidance, support, and feedback. As the number of Front Door government users continue to grow, so too does the visibility into each commercial capability submitted into our Enhanced Commercial Space Index. This alone is already improving capability development across the community. And there's more to come with this exciting initiative, so stay tuned as we expand its reach across industry. Now, speaking of excitement, at an industry day for the Geosynchronous Space Situational Awareness Program, you know it as GSAP, earlier this year, some 150 companies showed an interest in participating. As a result, we're now working through SpaceWorks to build a pool of companies with ready-to-use products. And this includes venture capital investors and startups, not just traditional defense contractors. Our goal, once again, is to speed up adoption of commercial technology for our most critical military space missions. And space domain awareness is at the top of that list. Of course, these finely tuned partnerships can only succeed if we have skilled men and women on both sides of the equation. Industry experts working shoulder to shoulder with highly trained and experienced guardians, so training becomes another area of attention for us moving forward. There are also a number of key activities of the Space Force that is taking right now in the next 6 to 12 months. The work the 15th Space Surveillance Squadron did to add augmentation to our space domain awareness sensors around the world is a great example of employing commercial capability by buying it instead of building it. It starts with the Raven Telescope Network, a distributed global network of commercial off-the-shelf small telescopes that we use for SDA research. The team fielded a number of major software upgrades to better control the network, to include using machine learning to automatically detect objects in space with a remarkable 90% confidence rate, exceeding Space Operations Command's requirements by a factor of 2. Essentially, finding a way to exceed operators' needs without an expensive acquisition program or a custom-built solution. Another recent success occurred when Space Force Space Operations Command, in partnership with our SSC, approved the operational acceptance of a milestone upgrade to the ground-based optical sensor system at White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico. It's being extended out here as well. In fact, SPOC is currently in the integrated testing phase of an upgrade to the ground-based electro-optical deep space surveillance site here in Maui, which will upgrade to GBOS upon operational acceptance. This is critical because GBOS improves our ability to map the space operating environment. Guardians need this knowledge to conduct full-spectrum operations in response to threats, the kind of operations that will be necessary for the success of any joint force campaign. The upgrade not only improves sensitivity and boosts the number of objects we can track, it also takes advantage of data provided by commercial sensors to help with our unquenchable thirst for SDA data. And it's cheaper, which I like. In other words, it's a leap forward in capability to the joint warfighter. And it was all done by a small team of acquirers, operators, contractors, with a strong technical understanding of requirements, skillful program management, and seamless execution across partner organizations. This is exactly the model for future collaboration with industry. Now, recent conflicts around the globe have made it clear. Space is fundamental to modern warfare and to our modern way of life. It is also clear that the awareness of the domain is foundational to every other effort in space, and that space domain awareness is truly a team sport, one critically reliant on technology as a force enabler that must be supported by commercial collaboration, integrated training, and coalition operations. We need to find better, faster ways to excel, to work together as responsible actors to identify and then protect and defend activities that undermine the safety and security of the space domain. We all know what we need. We need to improve cooperation, improve coordination, and improve interoperability. We need to work together to identify threats, sustain freedom of action in space, optimize resources, enhance mission resilience, and ultimately deter conflict. We need to increase our collaboration with all our commercial space industry partners to more quickly enable new capabilities, capabilities that supported integrated deterrence and better space domain awareness. And this integration, by the way, must include data sharing and interoperability between our allies and our industry partners. Now, we've started the ball rolling, but we need to build that momentum. So make connections here, then keep talking, keep innovating, keep sharing. We are committed to working closely with all the stakeholders, maybe more closely now than ever. So thank you. Thank you not just for the opportunity to speak today, but for what you do, for being here as a part of this important conversation, and for your continued support. I look forward to working with you all as we embrace the can-do spirit and focus on SDA problem solving, not just SDA enhancements. The safety and security of the space domain depends on it, and our nation is depending on us. Thank you, Semper Supra.
I understand there's time for Q&A for a few minutes.
Dang it, I didn't talk long enough.
It helps to have your microphone on. So I understand this, we have time for Q&A for a few minutes. You can see on the screen how to ask these questions, but I'm going to take the moderator's prerogative to ask the first one or two. General Saltzman, the Space Force released its warfighting framework in April, and I'd love to hear you talk us through how that carries on and matures some of the concepts of your theory of success.
Yeah, we started with the theory of success that said simply we have to avoid operational surprise. We have to deny first mover advantage with resilient mission architectures. And then we have to be able to conduct responsible counterspace campaigning, because it's not enough to just protect our assets. We also have to deny the adversary the ability to use space-enabled targeting against our joint force. And so once you establish that theory of success, the next follow-on question is immediately, yeah, how are you going to do all that? And while there's a technology and an acquisition piece to building mission resilience, certainly building the space domain awareness architecture that this community knows, it's that third one, the conducting responsible counter-space campaigning, that I felt like we needed to do some work for. And it starts by just to bringing everybody the common terms of reference. When we say we want to conduct responsible counter-space campaigning, what does that include? What does offensive and defensive campaigns look like as they extend into the space domain? And so we tried to provide a framework so that our planners would understand what capabilities we have, what we think about when we try to secure a domain, make it safe for our operations, but hold at risk an adversary's capability to target us with space-enabled capabilities. And so that warfighting framework was just to give planners that common vocabulary to integrate into combatant command war plans, how to bring space and its effects into that integrated plan. We have to conduct multi-domain operations. And the Space Force is committed to making sure that space is equally integrated and that we leverage that domain as effectively as possible.
Great, thank you. As well, another question I'd like to ask you is just kind of a forward-looking type of thing. You know, looking ahead to say 2030 or so, what would you say would be successful maturation of the Space Force in terms of what do you hope it will have accomplished by then, and how will you determine that's been done successfully?
Yeah, it's a great question. And when I think forward thinking, I can't think 2030. Really, the systems just don't operate like that in the government business. So I'm thinking 2040 and beyond. But you can't get to 2040 without passing through 2030. So I recognize that we have to connect all this together.
Timeline.
Yeah, exactly. So we start by making tomorrow better than it was today. We're more resilient. We have more capacity, more effectiveness. And it really comes down to people and technical equipment to give those people. I want the best trained guardians that understand their equipment, understand what the threats that they face are, understand the tactics to mitigate those threats. So we're trying to build a test and training infrastructure so that our operators, our intelligence personnel, our acquirers, our cyber officers and enlisted, that they understand what the stakes are, they understand what the tactics are, and they get to practice the sets and reps to really understand what it takes to continue to provide this in a contested environment. So that's right out of the gate. Over the next 4 or 5 years, we're really going to focus on readiness as a force for the challenges we face. We are going to grow. The Space Force recognizes that we don't have the capacity yet to meet all the missions that are coming our way. So there will be some manpower growth. But really it's about organizing around the concept of readiness and building the equipment that we know we need to sustain that readiness in a contested domain.
Thank you. So again, I'm reminding people that we're taking questions from the audience, getting a bunch, so we won't be able to ask all of them, but I'd love to get through as many as we can. There's a question, how can we provide more opportunities for on-orbit testing and prototyping, especially for AI and machine learning?
It starts by launching on-orbit test capabilities. And it sounds like such a simple thing to do, but we got into this habit when space wasn't a contested domain, where everything we launched to space was expensive, we recognized the cost, and so everything had to be connected to an operational use. That direct connection to operational use meant that we didn't have extra capacity that was just focused on test and training. So once you recognize that training for a contested domain, which doesn't happen on a day-to-day basis, is also required, then you start to realize you have to buy more assets than what is needed for the day-to-day operations. You have to buy test, you have to buy training assets to really accomplish those functions. And so we've simply added it into our cost analysis. We've said if you're going to build a force, it's not just about building a constellation. You have to build a force that's capable of using it. They have to be trained. They have to practice tactics. We have to test things to see if they work in a real environment. And so we've had to add that cost to our building the force, which means test and training capabilities on orbit as well as in a simulated environment.
Thank you. So another question, I think it's a really interesting perspective. How do we assess risk for fielding new capabilities versus the risk of keeping current systems? And what can a technology provider do in development to tip the scale toward adopting new capabilities?
Great question. One of the things that I struggle with inside the NCR is convincing people that we are currently experiencing risk. There's something about status quo that feels risk-free. Maybe this is a human thing, where the condition we're in seems less risky. And that's, we have to advocate and say the current position we're in has inherent risk. And everything we're doing to advance is to overcome that risk. And while there might seem to be risk in the future, or whether it's technological risk, whether it's risk to not understanding all of the implications of where we're headed, we have to understand that we are simply trying to bury the risk that currently exists. We are not in a risk-free environment and assuming additional risk. We are just moving into the environment, recognizing the risk that currently exists and saying, I would rather be in this situation in the future than just living with the status quo risk that we currently face. And that's just going to be an ongoing effort. We all need to educate and continue to educate what the current risks are and how moving away from the current risk is just as important as status quo, where it feels like it's the comfort zone of status quo is hard to overcome.
Thank you. So leveraging commercial SSA or SDA capabilities has been a priority since former Dazzy Lavero said in an AMOS keynote back in 2015, so 10 years. How is a new commercial integration strategy helping make that a reality?
Well, again, I think all these strategies, they're not really, detailed plans for if we do, step A, B, C, D, we're going to have a better commercially integrated Space Force. It doesn't really work like that. But what I felt was necessary is to make sure we're all on the same page. Make sure we describe mission areas the same way. Make sure we understand requirement sets. And so what we did with the commercial strategy to some degree is defined our terms. So that when we're talking, when we're explaining concepts about what we need, what we want, what those requirements are, even if it's at a high level, we're using the same terms so that we're talking about the same things. I was in a number of conversations where I'm hearing one thing when the contractor, the industry agent, is saying something different. They mean something different with the same words. That was a problem for getting on the same page and making sure we weren't wasting resources or going down a path where one side thought they were meeting the requirements and the other side thought they weren't. So the strategy was about getting us all on the same page. The second thing I think it did is it gave a list of priorities. Here's what we're really interested in industry supporting. Because there are other areas where I think we're okay and I'm less interested. So don't spend money here. Don't waste your time. I'm not shopping for this capability yet. I'm really interested in this. And I think just organizing those priorities allows us all to use our resources better and make sure we're affecting the high priority issues and setting aside things that maybe can come later or a little bit further down the road.
Thank you. Can you provide your thoughts on how you view potential commercial contributions to the GSAT follow-on program?
Can I?
Can you elaborate on
Will
what your views are? Understanding the limitations of classification, of course.
Well, yeah, so on-orbit SDA is always going to be important. There are just things you can do with on-orbit sensors that we have a harder time doing from fixed locations on the Earth. So in that vein, what's the next innovation? What's the next best way to do it? Can we do it cheaper? How many do we need? We don't pretend that we have all the answers to that. We may come to the conference table, we may come to the meeting with an idea in our head about what we want. Well, challenge us on that. Tell us there's a better way to do it. Tell us that we can do something from LEO rather than GEO. Tell us we need more capabilities in GEO, less in LEO. Is there a MEO option? I think what we're really interested in is hearing ideas rather than just expecting the government to sit back and go, hey, here's our concept for the follow-on. Can you meet these requirements? That sounds transactional to me. That's not the collaborative approach that I was just talking about. I want ideas generated. I want you to tell me what you think. If we agree that you can gain space domain awareness with on-orbit capabilities, then tell us the best way to do it. And then we'll argue over the fine-tuned details. But we need to hear those ideas as well. So there's really a plea at my level to say, bring us ideas, and then we'll sort out together what the follow-on program looks like.
Thank you. General Saltzman, you mentioned in discussing the theory of change and the warfighting framework, the idea of responsible counter-space campaigning. And I read the framework and I'm still unclear. Does this mean non-debris causing? What does that mean exactly? Yeah,
the word responsible is very deliberate. We recognize that, I've used the analogy before, if you sink a ship in warfighting, it sinks out of the sea lane. If you shoot an airplane down, it falls out of the air domain. That's the Army's problem at that point, right? in the space domain, you start shooting spacecraft down and they stay in the domain with hazardous debris for decades. This crowd knows we're still tracking debris from irresponsible on-orbit testing to this day. And so we can't simply pursue a counterspace set of capabilities that potentially makes ineffective our ability to use the space domain for decades. That's not the best way to think about it. We need to think about how we do responsible counterspace. I need to hold at-risk targets, but I want to do it in a way that preserves our ability to use the space domain the way we want it. And so it's just a balancing act, and that's why the word responsible is there. Doesn't mean no, doesn't mean it's off limits. It says we're going to be responsible as we think through this. We're going to try to figure out how to make sure we meet our commitment to the joint force by holding at risk an adversary's space-enabled targeting capabilities, but at the same time, we're going to do it in a way that allows us to preserve a secure, stable space domain.
Thank you, that helps. So the next panel is talking about international military SDA sharing, and the question that came in, I think, is a nice tie-in to that. The questioner wants to know, can you expand on the international partnership strategy and how you want enhanced allied partner collaboration in SDA, and what policy barriers exist that prohibit the Space Force from moving faster without allied partnerships? Yeah,
the ability to work with international partners, allies, is always governed by everything from international treaties through laws, all the way down to policies that have to extend to all of the government agencies as well as other military services. So that is always going to be there. But we're trying to push the envelope even more fundamentally and say, rather than just determine that the United States has to develop its space domain awareness capabilities organically and be able to do 100% of the mission without any support, rather than think like that at the outset, why don't we say, let's all come together. Let's all figure out what the strengths and weaknesses are. Let's all do gap analysis together. Where do we see problems in our ability to collectively provide space domain awareness? And then you start to assess, what can allies bring? What can they bring that we can take advantage of? What do we bring that they can take advantage of? And if we build a collective architecture, we think it'll be more resource informed, it'll be more effective because we'll get to use the whole planet rather than just the key areas that we can control. And so the whole essence of the international partnership strategy is to make sure that we, from the beginning, in our force design, account for allies and partners and what they bring to bear, country by country. Each one has unique pros, unique cons, strengths, weaknesses. Account for that in our force design so that we don't have to buy something that we can count on from our allies.
Thank you. So the next question, more kind of how things work in terms of administration. How does the Space Force plan to use OTAs to improve acquisition efforts to current and future efforts?
There's going to be some really smart people up here that can answer that question in great detail. I promise you. From my vantage point, all I've done is try to encourage our tremendous acquisition professionals to use every tool at their disposal. They're going to roll their eyes because they've heard this so many times. We have to have a yes-if mentality. Yes, we can do this if the following things are true. And there are a lot of different ways, a lot of different acquisition strategies, whether it's the software pathway, whether it's OTAs. And we just have to embrace all of them. Rather than maybe something comfortable that we're used to using, let's use all of the tools at our disposal to be as effective as we can, bringing companies on contract, getting the money spent, getting the capabilities delivered as effectively as possible.
Thank you. There's a question that came in. Can you expand on your intent for an allied or coalition virtual training environment?
Well, if you can't train together, it's really hard to work together in stressing environments. I was going to say warfight together, but it's really more than that. Sometimes the system and challenges just in day-to-day operations are stressful. And if you wait until that point to say, how can we do this together, it's probably too late. And if you can't train together on a routine basis, you miss some of the nuances of space operations. The best way to get people together routinely with our technology is virtually. If we have to all travel to the same location and be sitting side by side to do the training, it's going to limit the nations that can participate. It's going to limit the amount of time you can spend. So we really want to leverage as much virtual range, as much virtually constructed training environments as possible, because it's just easier to bring people together in a routine way, and we think that'll be more advantageous to us.
Great, thank you. I really appreciate your time. I think one last question for you, and then you're off the hook. So integrated C4ISR or SDA is critical to gain and maintain space superiority as well as other domains. What would you recommend to ensure unity of effort and ensure that we invest and integrate these capabilities?
Save the hardest one for last. Thank you.
You're welcome.
No, so one, let me just say, I love a question that starts with a statement when the statement is completely accurate and not something that you might have heard 3 or 4 years ago. We are making progress when we understand that, yes, C4ISR and space domain awareness has to be effectively integrated, or we're not going to be successful. Amen. Like, we're already ahead of where we needed to be. So thanks for the question in that kind of phrase. That does my heart good. But if we can't integrate, we're just not going to be as effective. And that's hard work. So I don't have any easy, okay, here's what you do and here's the best way to integrate. What I keep coming back to is routine interaction creates integration. Routine interaction. It's not the first time you get together where you discover all the problems. That's where you have fun and get to know each other and shake hands and everything's great. The second time is probably not when all the problems come up. You have to have these routine, recurring interactions to really get at the subtle nuances that will make or break an operational capability, will make or break true interoperability as we work across partnerships. And so that's what I'm really focused on, is how do I make it easy to have routine interactions, because I think that's the most successful way to really build effective integration.
Great. Thank you very much. All right, please join me in thanking General Saltzman for your time today.